always tell the guys who really don't want to fight in a football game. You can tell who they are. Let me tell you who they are. The guy who takes his helmet off. You ever, they going to take their helmet off. They're going to fight. That's the last thing you're going to do if you really want to fight somebody is take your helmet off. Now, that's just bluffing. He just selling wolf tickets like he going to fight. He going to fight nobody. Taking his helmet off and backing up at the same time. Backing up, taking his helmet off. No, you keep your head your own. You want to protect your head, your noggin. Paul says, put on the whole armor of God, which he will delineate and talk about later. But he said it takes the whole armor of God to be able to withstand the wiles, the schemes, the devices, the plots, the plans, the conniving of the evil one. And that's why the context of the local church is so important, because it's through the ministry of the local church that God is giving us wisdom and insight and perspective and understanding, and we are benefiting from the life experience of the success and the failures of our brothers and sisters in Christ, and so we become the sum total of the people we've been exposed to, so we have in our spiritual repertoire the necessary weapons of warfare to do battle with the enemy at a moment's notice. Finally, brother, be strong in the Lord and the power of his might, that you may do stand against the wiles of the devil, for we do not wrestle against flesh and blood. Now, Paul now here uses a vivid term, a wrestling match. Now, when we think about wrestling, most of us, we're not thinking about the right type of wrestling. We're not talking about the WWF. We're not talking about those guys. That's not wrestling. That's prearranged entertainment for the pleasure of the viewing audience. If you want to see real wrestling, you have to watch the Olympic Games or college wrestling, where the combatants, they engage in hand-to-hand combat. You can't run out of the ring in a real wrestling match. Now, you got to stay right there on the mat within the perimeter of the circle where otherwise you're disqualified. And so it has been said the most strenuous of all sports is wrestling. College wrestling, high school wrestling, unlike any other sport. In football, you run a play, the whistle blow, everybody stop, everybody catch their breath. In basketball, you rip and run up down the floor, and if you get real tired, just go and foul somebody, and the referee will blow the whistle. So everybody can go and stand the free throw and hold them to the trunks and try to catch their breath. In almost every sport, even in soccer, you have enough people on the field, and when the ball is not near you, you can rest. In tennis, every time the ball goes over the line, they stop it. In golf, well, you get all day just about do what you want to do. In bowling, you throw the ball down the thing, you sitting there while other guys throwing his ball. But in wrestling, there is not a single second that you can relax. And that's why the wrestlers are probably the best trained athletes, because they have the maximum exertion of energy during the entire match, because if they rest for 1 second, if their body relaxes, the enemy will sense that their body has relaxed, and before they put them in a hole or bring them to submission. And so you see these guys, they are basically the best trained athletes. They have to watch every single thing that they eat. They want to come in right at the proper weight so they can wrestle at the proper weight. It is the most strenuous of all athletic endeavors, and Paul uses wrestling to describe what we're engaged in the Christian battle. It's not a tennis match, it's not a football game, it's not a basketball game, it's not a soccer match, it is not a bowling match, it's not golf, it's wrestling. And so the enemy is always reaching and tugging and pulling and trying to find you in a vulnerable situation so that he can get you in a submission hold. He says, we wrestle not against flesh and blood. He says, but it's principalities and powers. Paul says, if it was physical, then we could get our hands on him. And we could nullify his maneuvering, but he's coming to us from angles and from different perspectives and different ways that we don't even see him coming. Paul says we got to have a head that swivels around in circles. We got to be vigilant at all times, because we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, Paul says. Against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavenly places. And so Paul now vividly describes the enemy that we are dealing with here. And he uses several very descriptive terms. First of all, he says against principalities and against powers. The term that Paul uses for principalities and powers, it describes the hierarchy that exists in the spiritual realm. Paul says there is spiritual hierarchy in the spiritual realm, that the devil and his demons are not just some disoriented, disorganized cast of characters, but they are very well organized. He says there are principalities and there are powers, there are angels and archangels, there are dominions and authorities. Paul says you're up against an organized enemy. It's not a bunch of spiritual peasants you're dealing with. You're dealing with the most spiritually equipped enemy that you could ever face, organized principalities and against powers, against rulers of the darkness of this age. Every nation, I believe, that has any spiritual potential to do God's work, that the enemy has principalities and powers against rulers of the darkness of this age. And I believe that in the United States of America, that Satan's strategy is to keep us preoccupied with materialism. When you have so much wealth and so much affluence, we just become sort of preoccupied with making money. We're trying to keep our money and trying to buy stuff that money can buy. So we have a preoccupation with materialism. And then our second preoccupation is for sexual fulfillment, sexual expression. Because now you're hitting people at the base of where we really live. Part of our humanness, part of our being as being a human being is that we are sexual beings. Sex is a gift that God gave to the human race. It is God's gift to us. It is God's gift for fulfillment between two people who make a commitment, man and woman, to live together in holy matrimony, and the sexual act itself is to be a sealing of the covenant. It seals the covenant relationship between a man and a woman. And it is to be a perpetual renewal of the covenant. And it's supposed to be pleasurable and enjoyable as two people are fulfilling, as they are renewing the covenant vow with each other. And I got to tell y'all this because you got to understand this. That was God's original design. And it also is to fulfill the mandate of being fruitful and of multiplying and of reproduction. And so the most pleasurable physical act that two people can engage in can result in conception and can result in procreation and the perpetuation of the human race. That's God's design. Now, because it is so pleasurable, and it is a natural biological function, that's why the enemy will try to corrupt it and to pervert it. And many of our health issues in our society today is directly linked to sexual promiscuity and sexual morality. Directly linked, not indirectly, directly linked to sexual promiscuity, sexual morality, whether it's AIDS, whether it's herpes simplex 2, whether it's the rise in ovarian cancer, uterine cancer among women, which now has been proven in many cases to be directly linked to multiple sex partners over a lifetime. Satan is hitting us. Now, we got to understand that he doesn't play fair. He always hits below the belt. It's always rabbit punches. It's always after the whistle has blown. That's just the way he operates. That's the way we operate. So in our society today, and few people are wanting to talk about it, we have a rise in sexually transmitted diseases that is reaching an epidemic proportion in our society today, and disproportionately in the African American community. And we acting like it's not, oh yes, it's happening. Don't take my word for it. Call the West Virginia Health Department and get the same statistics that I read, and you'll find the same data that I have. The 38% of all diagnosed HIV cases in the black community. We 3.2% of the population. 19% of all full-blown AIDS cases in the black community. Over 60% of all gonorrhea cases. This is ridiculous. This is the direct result of inappropriate behavior.